We'll do a bunch of stuff. I love that tune.
Good evening and welcome to Field Talk. I am the Field, also known as Field of Bears, here to remind you that socialism always ends in starvation inside. Now tonight I have another interview for you guys. But before we get started, as always, the link to the Handsome Mug is available in the description below. It is superior in every way to the Ugly Mug, so please buy one for your own enjoyment. Alright, so tonight we have on Big Drum Bear, who is a musician, theologian, and YouTube philosopher. Hey there, Jay. Welcome. Welcome to everybody. And the links to his social media are down below. I suggest that you subscribe to his YouTube, especially, and buy yourself a Love Chunk or Urakami shirt. Link in the description below. That is the bonfire link. Hello, Clay. And would you please say hello and tell anyone if I've missed something?
Oh, hello. And no, I think you got it pretty darn well. I'm glad to be here. I have to say I'm not exactly showing deference to the Handsome Mug tonight, though. You inspired me to go get a cup of tea, and this is the only Bears mug that I currently own, so I might have to cross promote a little bit.
Well, just the thing is, one of us will be walking away from this interview with testicular cancer, and the other one of us won't.
That's so great. That's awesome.
Actually, something I did miss is you're also a music instructor. So
yes, that's
true. And the website for your music instruction is in the description below. And
yes,
so, why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's like to learn music?
What it's like to learn music, huh? I don't think I've ever thought of considered a response to that before. That's an interesting question.
Well, that's why people come to the Saturday show.
That's very true. Excuse me. Well, I'm gonna think in real time here. No, I won't get too Peterson on you here.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit ambivalent on him at the moment. So
as am I. We're in the same camp on that one. Mm. But we have good reason, I think. So aside from Petersonian angst that we might be experiencing, um, so what is it like to learn music? Well, it's I'm trying to think of one word that could sum that up real well.
No,
It's
don't do
always an
that. Turn a phrase.
Well, I mean, I certainly could do that as well, and I'll probably do more. You know me, I'm gonna be verbose and say things at length, but to get the thing started, to get it rolling, I would say it's always an adventure. It is always completely brand new. Every little thing that you get to learn about music is always incredible. So I started doing this. I started getting into music when I was a really young kid. My mom is a classically trained pianist, got her music degree from Bragley University in Peoria, Illinois. I remember going to the campus with her a number of times in my youth when she'd have classes or other things she'd have to do over there. And my second brother Ben, he was still a baby at that time. We might have we might have a babysitter we'd stay with occasionally on campus, friends of hers and things, but largely we just tag around with her on campus. So I was around uh, high class musicians at a young age, getting exposed to that. Both my parents were involved in theater when I was younger. In fact, my dad put on he directed a performance of the musical Evita at one of the local theaters. It's well known around here, Cornstalk Theater. It's like one of the few outdoor theaters that they do during the summer times and put on a number of neat productions. So when I was maybe a couple of years older, so maybe 3 at most, they did Evita. And I remember I still have like memories of going to rehearsals for that, hearing some of the people that were in that production singing the songs or working those up. My mom was training them and how to go through all that. So, excuse me, music has been with me since a very, very young age. I've just been around it continually. And I think my mom started instructing me in piano when I was about 6 or 7. I didn't have much of an interest at that point, but I thought, okay, it's cool. You know, I'll do what moms want me to, but I didn't practice. I wasn't interested that deeply. Then it came around to being about 5th grade, and I was up to do band in middle school. And I think this guy came over from the local musical instrument store and had a whole bunch of different ones for us to try. So I came up there and tried out the clarinet, and I played clarinet for the first 3.5 years of band. But along that time, I also ended up picking up trumpet. I picked up baritone saxophone as well as alto because they have very similar fingerings. At one point, I started really getting interested in drums, and that was a whole new adventure for me. That just opened up a world, and that became my first love instrumentally. But I also ended up playing tuba for the band there in middle school out of necessity because there was only one other tuba player, and the director's like, we need to fill this out. We need to get the sound more complete. You've got a month. Could you learn tuba and learn the music for our contest that we're going to for competition for middle school bands in a month? Okay, I'll give it a go. So that it's always been an adventure. There's always been something new to do, but it's been really, really useful for me because it's allowed me to conceptualize the world in a plethora of ways, like a myriad of different ways. I don't just see the world from my own perspective. I'm like excited to go get into another person's perspective and try to understand how do they see the world. Now, that said, I really like my own perspective. I'm comfortable here. I dig that, but I'm always willing to have it grow. And it's also useful to do that as far as I see, because it fosters better, more complete communication between people.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So
So that's actually a really great kind of biographical understanding of that. And I'd like to say hello to The Last Moomin, hello to Pinder, hello to Andrew J, hello to and On a Journey, and one other person who I've forgotten for some. And so you've finally gotten into it. Is how does learning music change your perspective, and how does it change your students' perspective? Is from the teacher's point of view, can you see that happening?
Yes, yes, I can. Like every lesson I see something. And of course, I'm looking down at the
Big Riggin Bear. Hello, Big Riggin Bear. There
that's a good person to have up in here.
That's who I forgot.
Especially a little, Tinder action. It's always appropriate. Sorry, cross promoting. Haha. With the handsome, you have to have the ugly. That's how it works. If you're in the mood for dwelling in an attic, this is the mug for you, right? I'm sorry.
Have you heard the one about the Gestapo who walks into Dubai?
Scheißen.
German cussing doesn't count.
No, not at all, right?
Okay.
I don't even think that's actual German cussing. I think that's...
Oh, no, it is. It's the rude word for feces.
Well, I knew... yeah, I suppose you're right. I thought it was... Scheiser or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's what they were saying. Which I don't know. we're getting off into the weeds on the specifics of the Crowder bit.
We are. But no, teacher perspective changing in students.
All right, so my perspective gets changed in music, or through music, I should say, because it's a completely different language. I have to conceptualize. Well, let me take a step back from that. When we learn another language, both spoken and written, it includes a whole different framework for processing the world around us. There are a lot of similarities between ours and other languages, and you have to have some similarities in order for people to exist in this world and interact with one another, because they have to have some same frameworks of conceptualizing the world around them, right? In order to know what the heck they're seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and interacting with. To process the sensory input that we get, we have to have a framework for that. And so there have to be some degrees of similarity between cultures and languages. And there are some cultures that are way out there, way different. Music is a language and a culture in and of itself. And there are different subcultures within it. It's incredible. It's just a completely different world. And when I go there, sometimes I can use it to communicate an idea or some sort of a message, not having to do it in my native language. I'll go around it and get out of it. Like sometimes people shut their ears off. They're like, I can't hear what you're saying. I don't want to hear it. But when you go through music, there's something about using well-organized frequencies, combinations of sounds and silence together in a way that breaks down some of our barriers mentally to things we think we know or things we think we don't want to hear about. And now we can receive a different perspective than we had. Doesn't mean we have to agree with it, but we might be in a better position to consider it. And I found that true in my experiences with music. I'm trying to think of a more concrete example.
Well, it sounds a bit like music can bypass the logos and go straight to the pathos.
Yes. In fact, I think what it really does is it unites those two. It's a synthesis of those things, because what are you doing when you listen to music? You're not just listening to these well-organized melodies and harmonies and rhythmic structures that
if it's halfway any good, I'm letting it move my soul.
Exactly. And there are lyrics to go along with it. So the logos is incorporated into whole this process, right? But it's
I listen to Italian opera and I've got no clue what's going on. I just know it sounds real pretty.
That's certainly true. You're right. And we can do it without logos. That's certainly the case. But at the same time, we can combine it with, and that logos element in the Italian opera you're listening to does impact a person on the logos level, on the word level, with Italian people who know what they're saying. So it does have that function. It can have different impact to different people. 10 people can listen to the same song and get a completely different takeaway from it. And that's incredible to me. And it doesn't mean that, real quickly, I can see people, because I have seen it, people get nervous about this sort of thing because they're saying, are you suggesting relativism? Are you suggesting that values are all relative? It doesn't matter. Not at all, right? There's still a concrete reality. There's still an objective experience that we're all having. Music can help inform that. It can help communicate our experience of that objective reality to someone else, because we're all seeing it through glasses, right? We're all seeing this objective reality through our glasses. But excuse me, when we can get into each other's heads a little bit, at the very least, maybe we can learn to interact with each other better. Now, there are going to be people and situations where I know this isn't going to work, right? Because mindsets, perspectives on the world are diametrically opposed to one another sometimes, and you can't break through that. But where it is possible, music does a wonderful job of that. So,
Yes.
yeah, does that answer?
It actually answers it beautifully. I'd like to say hello to Clay and Trevor.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
What's that?
I suggest you pull up the chat. I didn't see anything about determination in my chat, so
let me see if I can. Let me see if I can.
make sure you mute the
Yeah, that's going to be important,
so it doesn't mess with your head.
right?
Hearing your own voice and my voice, a slight delay. It's really trippy, so I advise against that.
I'm going to make it work. Hang on a second. Here we go. Hey, there's my face.
And we talk about the bridging of logos and pathos across culture and across language. And what it sounds to me is like you say that music carries in it some immutable truths, or at the very least some things that can cross over the linguistic or cultural barriers that maybe aren't quite true, but they have enough of the truth in it.
So I'm sorry that the volume I cut it down for a second, and I had to cut yours as well at the same time while I muted the video so I could watch the chat. Can you restate some of that question? Because I want to make sure I understood properly.
All right. So, well, it sounded to me just a bit like you were saying that good music carries in it something like immutable truth. Like if we can get close to knowing such a thing, music can carry at least some of that. And it can go across language and across culture. So if that's what you're saying, then maybe, like, what are the kinds of things that you think music can carry with it?
Well, specific examples that I'm thinking of, I gave you a link that you added, I believe, into the description of the video here, and I've talked about it on my channel before. And you
talking about the shirt? Yeah, I got the shirt.
I'm talking about HaroldGreenMusic.com.
Oh yeah,
and
that's correct.
Aside from that, thank you, by the way, for putting up your chunk shirt, because that's fantastic.
Yeah, it is an undershirt, so if I wore it, no one would know.
That's true. Well, it can be. I mean, it's thin enough and soft enough that, yeah, it can totally be an undershirt. But of course,
do you see a collar on that shirt? Any buttons? No, that's an undershirt.
Oh, I'm sorry. You are far more dapper than I know how to be yet. You have taken class to a high level, especially in your streams, and I am.
Yeah, I subscribe to the former Eric Nimmer School of Dress.
Yes, very nice, as you should. That's appropriate.
But he's apparently abandoned his aesthetic standard, but that's okay.
He's abandoned his aesthetic standard. How's that?
Oh, he's going on live streams in an undershirt. A wrinkly white undershirt. It's not even ironed.
I think I set that tone from the beginning of my channel, because I was doing these streams not long after I'd get up. I still do.
Enough making fun of our friends, and
let's get back to that.
What are the things that the music carries with it? You see, you're almost as bad as Fender, man.
Oh, I'm a champion at getting sidetracked. Let me tell you. And if you've watched my streams, you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, truth, music. Come on, program, man. Come on.
Right. Let's do this here. Let's be serious. We'll do it live. So, what immutable truths can be communicated through music? Is that the question?
Yeah, or as close as you can get to that.
Sure. Well, I would say, I was starting to talk about Harold Green. HaroldGreenMusic.com. That's green with an extra E on the end for those that aren't familiar. He's my musical mentor. I did an interview with him about a month ago almost now. It's getting closer to. And he's been a monster guitar player for decades. He is extremely well known in the Carolina, Raleigh, Durham area as an A-list musician. He's got a lot of respect in the musical community. Oh, I'm getting a spiral from the stream. Is that just me?
I certainly hope so. My box is green.
It might be me. I might be pushing my luck too much. I might have to turn the chat off just to make sure that I stay consistent here because I don't want to lose it.
Hello, Island Bear.
Hey, always good to see people pop in here. I'll just have to rely on you to share chat information with me. That'll probably be wiser.
All right.
My Wi-Fi router's never been my friend over here, as many people know. So, immutable truths. So Harold he saw it fit when I met him about 10 years ago now to sort of take me under his wing and encourage me musically and help me grow. And I've grown more in the last 10 years than at any other time in my musical life. I've grown spiritually being friends with that guy a lot too. He's really pushed me, and he's pushed me to the point at times where I've had to remind him of things that he taught me when he was having down times. And that's amazing. That's wonderful. But on the musical side of that, he brought me in to work on this album of his, the Love album, to play it live, right? Do it live. I can't get that out of my head. That's been stuck in my head all day. That O'Reilly bit. He brought me in to play on live shows a number of times, and we're still looking forward to doing some of that. You know, Bears, by the way, if you want some Harold Green love music brought to your area, get in contact. We'll see what we can make happen. If there's a venue out there that wants us, we'll see what they're able to do and bring the love concert to your area, because it would be awesome. But when he's put that album out, he's talking about a number of different subjects along his journey in life. I mean, you have songs like Man Inside Me that's on that album, which is my favorite. And he's talking about his facing the world as a man, but the man inside him is not really a man. It's a lost and lonely boy waiting. I'm trying to think of the lyric. Yeah, it's slipping away from me, but it's this concept of recognizing that he's still got a lot of insecurity and fear, even though he's a grown man. He's supposed to be a man. He's supposed to be taking on the world and doing his thing. And he wrote that song well over 20 years ago. And it's still an anthem for him in a lot of ways. He's like, he's still got to face that every single day. But he also has a great song in there. A great song he wrote called Angela. It's about his sister, one of his sisters who was born with severe mental retardation. And it wasn't Downs. It was another form of mental, hamperings in some way. And other physical ailments that she dealt with throughout her life. She wasn't supposed to live beyond a year, and she lived to be 52. She was totally dependent on others her entire life, but she taught people around her a message of love. She taught people what it meant to just be overjoyed to be alive, because she was constantly overjoyed just to be around people. It's so many memories that he shared about her, and especially in that particular song, still touch me. And I never got to meet Angela, but I feel like I did every time I listen to that. My youngest son, when we've been in the car at times, he's told me more than once that's one of his favorites. He loves it when I put that on. Anytime I put that song on in the car, my kids usually chill out. They're like, they might be high tension or whatever the heck is going on, but that brings their whole mood down. It just gets them to relax and chill. And even if they're not necessarily thinking about the lyrics, it's the mood of that whole message that just makes their other troubles subside. Their other stresses, whatever's on their mind, go by the wayside for a little bit, and they just take a deep breath and take stock of the moment.
And it's really beautiful. And I pull out of that courage, the necessity for daily courage from your first story. I think that's what that song is about from your description.
Yes.
And the second one appears to be about familial love and how love makes a family.
Love does make a family, and I think another truth that comes through that is that the packaging we might come in doesn't determine what our impact will be. We might not always come looking or feeling like we're anything hot or anything worth taking a second look at, but each one of us has inside us the ability to impact deeply those around us in a really, really, really positive way. And I think that's what he wanted to communicate to people, because what people in his family probably didn't always get along. There were a lot of people that had, different issues with each other for a long time, as he's told it to me. And then everybody was at that funeral because everybody loved her. Everybody that had any memory of Angela was nothing but positive. And so it was definitely a way for him to communicate through that song that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're not the smartest, if you're not the fastest, if you're not super talented in some particular art form or whatever the case may be, you can have an impact on massive amounts of people. And now she's been gone since 2014 and she's still having an impact. That song has been heard by thousands upon thousands of people, and it will continue to impact folks. Anytime we've played that song live, or Harold's played that song live, and I've been there with him, never is the entire room dry-eyed. Many, many people are in tears because of what that message
welcome, Fairbear,
communicates to them. Yeah, welcome, Fairbear. Glad to see him.
Yeah,
or hear him anyway.
And that's actually that's a great point that you raise. A person's impact and the kind of impact that they leave. And you shared several impacts that people have had on your life, from your music teacher to this guy who you listened to in Iraq, who made the Learn the Bible in 24 Hours series.
Oh, yes, Dr. Chuck Missler, rest in peace. He just left to be with the Lord a few months ago. Some of you follow G. Morgan Jr. on Twitter, and he posted about that.
May those who loved him carry him in their memories, and may his brothers welcome him home.
Yes. Oh, yeah, you're quoting the tweet?
Not on Twitter.
Oh, no, that's right.
I'm a Christian. That's what I say when people die.
Well, as you should. Appropriate. For some reason, I thought you were quoting the Gerald Morgan tweet. I thought it was something to that effect. I could be wrong.
I have no idea. I'm sorry. I'm just...
No, you're good. You're good.
And to bring that up in a rather inelegant way, we are both Christians, and so
yeah, it's true.
Like, we've come to, and that makes us theists. And so, of all the God options out there, Jesus, Allah, Krishna, that weird eagle thing in Zoroastrianism.
Weird eagle thing. it was in the Angry Birds movie. That's what that was.
Yeah, or Set, or your own ego. Out of all those options, why theologically think we should go with Yahweh or the Trinity?
Sure,
as a Christian might call him.
Why am I a Christian, for lack of better terms? Bring it up.
Like we know why you're a theist, but
sure.
So why this particular thought?
It's a great question. Before I get to my part of it, there's a great book. No, I'm sorry. I don't know if he did a book on that or not. There's an apologist, a guy who deals with arguments for the Christian faith, a guy named Ravi Zacharias. I'm sure you might have heard of him, but plenty of other Christian folks out there might have heard of him. But he's an interesting character because his whole motto is helping the thinker believe and helping the believer think. Right? He's like, you don't leave your brain at the door to engage in this faith, and it's something that even those that are followers of the person of Yeshua ben Yosef, the son of Joseph, but as we would know him as Jesus Christ. Those who want to follow
the misspelled, bastardized, Latinized name.
Well, we do. And that's some people get hung up on that too, and I understand. I used to,
well,
but I realize.
But when you understand, it basically just comes from misspelling his name in Latin for 100 years.
It's very true. You're absolutely right. It comes from a lot of things too. I would say the nature of going from one language or one syllabary to another. You're going to have some awkward pronunciations. There's all these weird Anglicizations of Hebrew names that we're familiar with. We say Matthew, we say John, we say
the name Jesus. It's actually more hilarious than that because it was it was Grecized, then Latinized, then Germanized, then Anglicized. So
it's an interesting point that you bring up because this is a book, right? This is a series of writings that was collected together long, long ago that have been translated through so many different languages, right? It's been through all these different things. You had the Aramaic Targums of Jonathan that were, and various other Targums or portions of some of these books that had been traveling around all sorts of different places throughout the centuries. Those are one of the sources that have been used.
By various creeds in the early church.
That's very true. That's very, very true. I should say, Ravi, that's what I was mentioning before. Ravi had a number of talks he'd done over the years, and I think he did a book on this, but he'd done talks on why he is a Christian. I think he'd been asked before to do a talk on why he's not a Hindu or why he's not some other religion. And he's like, I find that to be less productive. I don't think that's an argument that I want to go out and try to make. I'd rather make the argument as to why I am what I am, why I have chosen it, what the positive arguments are for that, right? And sometimes there would be negative arguments in the midst of that. Like some people have actually come to the position of doing that because they were just so disgusted with wherever they were before. They didn't see truth in it. And people have said the same thing about Christianity. They've left it because they couldn't continue to intellectually assent to it anymore from what they had learned, right? From the perspective they had. And I get that.
One of those arguments I hear a lot is, how can I believe in a God who sends people to hell?
Exactly. That's a great question. That's a great thought. I've wrestled with that thing myself because from my perspective, that is exactly what it seems he's doing, right? He would say, well, you're either going to do this or here's the punishment. And when the platform is set up for me that way, then my intellect deals with it and says, not just my intellect, but my emotional center, my sense of morality, those things come into play and say, this is wrong, right? This sounds wrong to me. It sounds like an unfair, rigged setup. And so there's something within me morally that responds to that. But that's an interesting point. Where am I getting this morality from, right? Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, would suggest that came about out of necessity over time, that groups gathered together and it was advantageous to develop various points of morality. But that argument is not complete in the least. I know David Berlinski is a gentleman who is very schooled within the sciences and I think largely is in the area of journalism, if I remember correctly. But he wrote a book called The Devil's Delusion in response to that. And that's definitely one to look into if you want to understand more of that question. It's funny that when people bring up questions like that look at, like, how could a merciful God allow evil? Anytime you have a question like that brought up, it's either being brought up by a person or about persons, right? And I'm taking this directly from Ravi because he's answered this numerous times in live Q&A sessions at universities all around the world. And this is what it's something. It's not like there's not like a new question, right? There's not something new that they haven't seen. It's usually fitting within a certain group of categories. So this is one that comes up fairly often in some form or another. How could a merciful God allow people to go to hell. How could that happen? And it assumes from our human perspective that it's all in his hands to do that. And there's no volition on the part of the person who would go. And I also think it betrays a lack of understanding to some degree about the nature of heaven versus hell, and what that would all involve. I think it also misses out on our human depravity, our nature. When we have moral reactions to things like this question, that suggests to us that perhaps there is a right and wrong. We're taking a Judeo-Christian framework to even ask that question.
Okay.
If you think about it.
Well,
there's a framework of right and wrong.
Yeah, those are all really good points in favor
Just-
of a deity. But
Yeah.
I feel like we've strayed a little
We
bit
have a bit,
from,
and I am getting
from
back to
why the Judeo-Christian moral system is the one that you choose, and the God that you believe to be the real one.
for sure. And I did want to segue over there just for a little bit to give some light to what you were suggesting, like that question that people ask about how could a merciful God send people there. It was relevant to step on that because we were here with the Robbie stuff, but in moving through that, he's played a role in me thinking through some of these questions. And that's part of my bigger answer to your original question is that.
Wait, hold on just a second. It's chat. Which really important chat just came up with Stephanie. Says that you saved her about a year ago. She asked you the same question. That she was distraught and questioning everything with all the stress that was happening. And Stephanie, one thing I would like to stress is while Big Drum Bear was a very big part of that, he didn't save you. That's God's job, and you chose to let him save you. So give him credit, but not the credit that God and you were supposed to have.
I know who that is. That's Monkey Wrench Bear's wife. That's Steph. She's a dear. And I'm so glad she's in the chat tonight.
Yeah,
and it's very kind of her to say. I appreciate the sentiment. I love where she's coming from with that. And I echo what you said too, Field. You're absolutely
okay.
right.
Sorry for the interruption. Let's go back to the other thing.
Let's do that. But yeah, I'm glad we could take a moment out there to acknowledge Steph. Thanks.
I've been mostly trying to keep the chats in the back of my head, but that one was really important. So
it was. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing that. I'm really grateful. I'm absolutely glad we took time out for that. All right, so I'll move forward to better answer your question, like why did I lean toward biblical Christianity as opposed to other religions? I was raised as a Lutheran, the Lutheran denomination. My family heritage comes from northern Germany.
Stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel, sit.
Yeah, a lot of that liturgical stuff, man. I was definitely brought through all of that. I had 4 years of study in Luther's small catechism growing up. We would go through the 10 Commandments and an explanation of each of the commandments in the Lutheran traditional liturgical way, or it's not the word I want there. The traditional Lutheran doctrinal way of approaching those. That's the word I wanted. Yeah, we'd study the 10 Commandments, and then we'd study parts of the Apostles' Creed and break down the Apostles' Creed and understand what is this creed about? Why do we believe what we believe? And I didn't think much on it at the time. It was just that I had memorization to do each week to demonstrate that I knew what I was talking about. And all I knew at the time was I was going to confirmation class, and that's how you get to the point where you take communion. You got to go through 4 years of confirmation. And I didn't fully understand it, but our pastor was really great at digging into some of these different issues. And then there were some where I thought I wasn't sure about some of the things he had to say as I was growing up. It made me think. There was one kid in our class, one of my good friends that I'd known since I was like 2. His name was Chad. And Chad had a question about this, like, why would we baptize babies? Why is it that we do that? Like, why wouldn't we wait until they're an adult to have the choice? This is similar to like Owen asking about, are talking about circumcision on infants. Like, why would we do that? And if they don't have a choice in the matter, it seems wrong. And our pastor felt that it was from the traditional Lutheran perspective that you do this because you're acting on their behalf and you want to there's this concern of original sin in Lutheran doctrine, that if the child's never had an opportunity to personally repent for it because they're not capable of understanding that, then in that philosophy and that way of thinking about the scripture, if they didn't get baptized, they're in risk of hellfire because you didn't have someone act on their behalf. And this buddy of mine, Chad, he didn't understand that. He didn't see that. He wasn't on the same page with them on that. And so
I'm not on the same page as that either.
Nor am I. I've had differences with that particular view. I mean, I do think that there's a sense of sin that all of us inherit in a sense. I do think that it's almost genetic in a sense. I would make some argument to that. I don't know that I'd be well positioned to make that argument tonight. But I would say that is a position I think I hold. That yeah, we all have sin passed down to us. I think there's a biblical basis for that, in a number of different scriptures. But as to whether or not a child needs to be baptized before they die, in case they don't have an opportunity to make that decision of faith, otherwise they're going to be in hell. I don't find that to be the case. And again, I would think there are scriptural references that would back that up. And I'm thinking back to like David's child, as an example of that. Any kind of formula that is required in order for someone to be saved, I would say I take issue with that. I don't know that that's the case. But the point was that I started to ask questions. I started to be curious about things. And in my teen years, a lot of people weren't able to answer the questions I had. But thankfully, I had a Sunday school teacher at one point who pointed me in the direction of, in fact, it's right here. I pulled it out before. This book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell. I recommend this. This is a great classic piece of apologetics.
Yeah, that's off the screen, by the way.
Oh, is it? Here you go.
Yeah, that's on the screen.
Yeah, Josh McDowell, great cat, great apologist. There's the book. It should be on the screen now. Feel free to check that one out. He has a second one called More Evidence That Demands a Verdict, and he was dealing with a lot of the academic issues and things about the nature of who Jesus was. I've talked a little bit about Josh in previous streams. If you want to check some of those out, you'll find out. I can't tell you which ones off the top of my head, but I know previous episodes I've discussed some of that. But this started me down a road of Inquisition, really digging in. Well, Inquisition, maybe that's not the best word.
I think you mean inquiry.
Inquiry, thank you. Yeah, Inquisition's going to put a bad thought in some people's minds. It's like, he went like medieval Catholic? What happened here? No, that's not what I mean.
No, Inquisition, that implies a criminal proceeding.
That too, exactly. When you're talking about theological matters, some people think of Inquisition and they go back to the medieval days, or they'll be thinking about Monty Python skits too, one of those. So this started an interesting path for me, and then within the first year or so of my first marriage, I became aware of the Way of the Master ministry. That was Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron of the Growing Pains fame, and they had a ministry together, and they were focused on the purpose of the law of God in your life, and how the law of God shows you your sin, shows you where you are not doing what God said you ought to be doing, right? Its purpose is to convict you in that sense, to demonstrate where you're not measuring up. You're the equivalent of you having like a deadly disease and someone coming before you and letting you know very specifically, you've got to know this because you're not aware. You have this deadly disease. There's 10 clear signs of it in your flesh that I can see right now. And it's up to you whether or not you're going to accept that that's the case or not. But it was a step in my development, in my theological inquiry, right? Trying to understand the Bible better, understand why do I believe what I think I believe. So I continued in that path. When I went on my first deployment to Iraq back in 2004, a buddy of mine, I talked about Dr. Kent Hovind. Some people cringe at that name. I fully understand why. I was grateful because this guy was an inquirer. He dug in a little bit. And he made me think a little bit more about the creation versus evolution questions, want to dig in more. He brought a lot of interesting stuff in front of me to consider. And even now, as I've moved forward, I've grown beyond some of those things. Like I look back at it, it was a great step in my walk to go through some of those things. But it wasn't necessarily complete. It was just another stepping stone to continue on that path. Through some of those things, it brought me to Dr. Chuck Missler in the 24-hour study, the Bible in 24 hours thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
From all of this long of it, what I'm getting is it made sense to you logically, and through all of these, what would you call it, scholars,
right? They
presented evidence to you which you found compelling.
Yeah, and I'm taking my typical method of trying to explain that. Yeah.
Here's something that I might put forward is other followers of other deities, they produce results that stand in stark contrast to the Judeo-Christian deity.
Yes, a lot of times.
So that might have also been very compelling evidence for you, especially when you were among one of the chief other deities.
I was among a lot of followers of that other deity.
That's what I meant, of course.
Yeah, no, you're quite right. I'm not trying to correct you in sense. I'm just saying, yeah. I spent a lot of time around folks like that.
So from the chat in my back pocket, Steve says you need to tell a water buffalo story.
Yes, I do. I'm getting to that. That's what's coming right now, actually. That was my next point.
Okay, so it's looking like we're going to go over, and that's okay.
Oh, okay. Did you have a time limit?
No. It's normally I go for an hour.
Okay, I didn't know
if something is really good, I'll keep it going. And since you're really good,
I'll try to keep it succinct. I'll try to keep it more condensed here and get to the points.
All right. So there's Afghanistan and a water buffalo. Please explain.
It was Iraq, actually. It was still in
Iraq. Okay.
Was
this while you were
in Afghanistan?
Did it taste good? Is that why it's a story? I mean, come on.
No. Okay. So I talked about this, learning about this Dr. Kent Hovind character, and that was a period of time where I was learning about differences between the debates of creation and evolution. But on that trip, I also met one of the sergeants that was in my company at that time, and I think he was of a background where
well, the last moment, real quick, he's asking if it was Chank or a different buffalo.
No, I'll explain.
Different buffalo.
Not a physical water buffalo. This is a term that we used for a container of water that we would pull and as a trailer behind a vehicle. So it was a cylindrical water tank, held a few hundred gallons, I believe, and we could carry that with potable water anywhere we wanted on the back of a Humvee, hitched to a Humvee or other truck. So we had one of these on the premises, the compound where we were at in Al-Taji back in 2004. So I'd been having conversations with this sergeant that was part of our unit, and he was of the perspective that in order to be saved, you had to be baptized, but not.
Jay, don't worry, I'll get to that in just a sec.
What's that?
Jay's asking about baptism. I'll get to that.
I think
okay. I'll take a swing at that, and then I'll let you. But on with the water buffalo.
Sure. So, and this is related to baptism, right? This is what was going on. So, this sergeant had suggested to me that. I'm sorry, my nose is itching like crazy. This sergeant had suggested to me, from his perspective, that in order to be properly saved, as he read the scripture, you had to be baptized as an adult where you had volition over that. And you had to be baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? It had to be all three. It couldn't just be, I'm sorry. How did he say that? Yeah, he said it had to be all three. It couldn't just be one. I think that was the case. It couldn't just be in the name of Jesus or whatever.
Or I'm not in the name of God, apparently.
It had to be the Holy Spirit involved. You had to say all three, and that was important. Like there was this formula to the process, and without the right formula, you were missing it. He was focused on words, and I didn't know how to process this because he gave a compelling argument to me at that time. And I thought, well, I don't know about this. I'm not sure, but let's say that I'm wrong. Like that I go with it and I'm wrong.
Oh, Patriot Bear says he was there.
Patriot Bear was there. And that's why I was about to mention this. Patriot Bear was my witness for this. I didn't know. I mean, I had this argument put before me and I said, I just don't know. So if it is true and I say no to it, then that seems to be an issue to me. If it's not the case and I say yes to it, not a big deal. So I'll go get baptized just for the heck of it. Let me give this a go. So I said, I'm willing to give it a shot. And I thought, let's do it. Let's not waste another minute. Let's go right now. And I think it was Patriot Bear who suggested we could use the water buffalo because he was out there on that deployment with me. So he filled this thing about half full. And then that sergeant that had given me this perspective, he dunked me in 3 times, in the name of the Holy Spirit. I climbed myself a little porthole at the top of this cylinder and stuck my body into this water buffalo. I don't know if you're supposed to do that. You're probably not supposed to because
all that water is no longer potable.
Exactly. It had to be drained and cleaned after that, right? So, but I went for it. I'm like, we got to do something. There's water here. Let's go. I had the spirit of that eunuch that I think it was Philip met out in the desert, in the book of, I want to say it was in the book of Acts. I could be wrong about that, but there is a case where this Ethiopian eunuch is reading the scriptures and then Philip's there to explain it to him. Maybe I have the wrong people entirely, but that's one of the stories I'm remembering about this. And he's like, well, there's water here. Can I not be baptized now? And he's all about it. So I had that same mindset at that time. Now, shortly after that, I continued to read. I continued to study on my own. And I came to the perspective, okay, I don't believe that that's the case. I don't believe that there has to be some mystical formula that you say specifically in order to be properly baptized.
All right. Before we get into that, I would like to point out that in your story, you were dunked 3 separate times for,
3.
I'm guessing, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yes, 3 times. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'd like to go ahead and take a swing at explaining what baptism is.
Yeah, please.
And baptism is not a component of your salvation. It is an outward expression of an inward reality.
Absolutely.
It is a matter of displaying to your brothers that you are a part of the church and that you are doing your best to be obedient to God.
Right. And might I add to that just briefly, briefly, not like my briefly. As I've done more research over the years, I've come to find out that baptism was also, for many centuries, even before Christ, a method of someone signifying their being a disciple of a particular teacher. Because this was the tradition in the Jewish communities, in the Hebrew communities, that they would follow a rabbi and they would seek to be like their rabbi. They wanted to emulate him and to pass on his teachings faithfully. And so to signify that you were going to take up discipleship under a particular rabbi, you would be baptized to follow that rabbi. And so when John the Baptist, Jesus's cousin, was out there, baptizing people, he was doing it for the remission of sin, saying, I no longer want to live a life that disregards the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I want to be rid of that. I want to walk away from my sin. I want to turn away from it. There's a concept in Hebrew, this word shuv, right? It means to turn away from, right? Or to repentance is how we might.
That's how I've heard it.
Teshuvah is the word that means repentance. Teshuvah is this bigger word that means to repent, and shuv is the root of that. But it's the idea of going back to where you came from, right? It's not just turning away from sin, but turning toward your home, turning toward your source.
Well, you can't turn away from anything unless you have something else to turn toward.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So yeah, a little background on the baptism is useful there. It's like what you're saying, you're spot on. And the more I've read, the more I that becomes vividly clear to me. But in just sharing with you the background of how I came to where I'm at, it's been through all these.
I'd like to say on the John the Baptist tack just a little bit is in that story, John tells his cousin Cuz, I ought to get baptized by Eve or something of that sort. And and Jesus insisted that he be baptized by John as a matter of obedience to the prophecy. And so it's not about who baptizes you, and it's not about getting saved. If Jesus himself is doing it as a matter of obedience to God and to the Word, then that ought to be good enough for us.
Right.
Because I think that as Christians, we obey the commandments to the best of our ability.
Certainly.
As a not just like, ooh, fear God, scary hellfire. It's gratitude. It's
we want to be like our teacher.
Yes, our teacher has done so much for us, and we see his example work so well.
Yeah,
we want to express that in the world.
He knows what's going on. He built the world. You think we might want to follow that to the best that we can, and it is certainly an institution at this point, of Christendom, that's what you do. That's how you demonstrate this publicly, making the statement. There are people in that country that I was visiting at the time, Iraq, who do this with fear of death for doing so. Like it's a serious thing when they say to do that, and they do it publicly. Like that's a way bigger deal for them than it is for us. We don't have a concept in this country of what it means to do that, knowing that we're quite likely going to die for doing it. Now, we're seeing more of that in these times. We're seeing more potential for violent, how would you say it? Violent retribution for being cis white males and or females who identify with this archaic Christian faith that's so oppressive. But, and I say of this all in jest, of course. But
well, no, it's when the socialists take over. They have to, if they can't change you into like them, they'll do exactly what they did to the Christians in the Orthodox Christians in Russia.
You're right. It's very true. Because at the heart of all of this is this sense of
Patriot Bear, are you being abused by one of my mods? Tell me who it is. Because if you need a wrench because someone's timed you out, tell me now, and they will lose their wrench.
Get him.
If you're just asking for a wrench as a status symbol, come to more streams.
That's the way to do it. You guys got to follow Field of Bears. He's a great guy. Get his handsome mug. Get his old bear mug. What do you call your bear mug? Is it the handsome bear mug?
Well, that one is called the handsome mug.
Handsome mug.
Yes.
God, that's funny.
And you can get all manner of handsome products, from stickers to notebooks to T-shirts to clocks. And just don't mail them.
Yeah, don't do that. I was gonna say there's even baby onesies. There's baby onesies, and there's
I have like almost anything that you could want available on Redbubble. The link just goes straight to the mug, and you just click on the title, and it'll take you to the rest of the thing. Yeah,
that's hilarious, man.
Hey, if a mug is out of your price range, that doesn't mean I don't want your shekels.
Because that is the American currency, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, according to the alt-right in the comment section, shekels are the currency.
Because Jews control everything, as we all know.
Yeah, well, Pinder's hogging all the rain right now, so
he's hogging all the rain. Oh man, I can't tell you that how much I appreciate being able to join in with Bears. Like when I joined up with the Bears,
speaking of Bears,
yeah, go ahead.
Let's go on. Like I've got a pretty interesting bear on the line right now.
Hey.
So yeah, well, you might know him. He looks quite a bit like you. So let's go ahead and just tell the dudes who might not know what your channel's all about.
Oh, you're talking about me?
Yeah, you.
I thought you were saying on the line like you had a call. I misunderstood.
Oh, the call only has the open line. I haven't given it the link.
No, sure.
And I'm not putting it in the chat again ever.
Okay.
I've learned my lesson. I can no longer trust. I can no longer trust my chat.
Yeah.
From
Yeah,
the-
I hear
yeah.
you. I hear you on that. My channel is Big Drum Bear on YouTube. And of course, I've got links for at Big Drum Bear on
Yeah, the links to all the places are in the description below.
at Big
And
Drum Bear.
they're above my links. Keep scrolling if you want to buy a mug.
That's kind of you to put it above my links, or your links, I should say. Thank you. Yeah, I of course have the steadyintime.com website if you want to get in touch with me about musical things.
Oh, real quick, do they have to live in
No, not at
all. Lakeville, backward at Opia, whatever you're from, with no internet.
Peoria is the general area, the greater Peoria, Illinois area.
Yeah.
No, they don't. They do not. I teach online lessons. In fact, Kikya is one of our bears, and her son studies with me. We're doing online lessons, and they're working out quite well. So I have the ability. I do lessons with her through Hangouts. Right? We actually use the Hangouts to do it. We just do a one-on-one.
Excellent.
All sorts of different ways that I make that work out. Sometimes I can get multiple camera angles, all that kind of stuff. But we will get you educated in music. We will teach you how to read, write, record. We'll teach you the fundamentals of a particular instrument that you like. Whatever it is you want to do, we'll tailor it to you and make it work. You'd be amazed. Excuse me.
Okay, so if you're super poor, but you still want to learn a little bit about the fundamentals of music, then I suggest you check out Big Drum Bear's channel, because that comes up quite a bit.
I do try to talk about music on a fairly regular basis. I've been doing it a little bit less recently, but I am trying to incorporate more of that.
Actually, about that, I do have a suggestion right now. I just thought of it. Is why don't you pick a day?
Well, exactly.
Out of the week. I mean, like Saturdays are interview days, and Fridays are writing days.
I am starting to do that. Like every other Friday, I'm going to have be a game day. And speaking of that, I had a game day this past Friday, just yesterday, and I got some great advice on how to make that more streamlined for the next time, because it was a bit chaotic, but it was still a blast. I had so much fun with you guys playing.
Actually, I think there are some apps for games that are out that you can have people join.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd look into that as well.
I'm probably going to do that in future. We're going to do some stuff like that. Like at least every other Friday, I want to get a game going of some type that engages our minds, right? Because that's what I'm all about. Engage your mind, engage your body, engage your heart, and seek to serve the ultimate purpose. That's how I sign off. But it's all true. I try to do that.
Hello, Niraj. I'm glad you're. I always mispronounce your name. I'm sorry. Glad to see you here. And oh yeah, speaking of Big Drum's channel, there's a lot of and do and
yes,
and also chunk.
Yes, you gotta love chunk, or you're a commie.
Or you're a commie. Link in the description below. It's the one that says Bonfire.
Bonfire.com/don't-c-red-love-chunk. I just love saying the website name where you get the shirt. It's funny.
Oh yeah, my links are all they have % signs and numbers in them, so it's impossible.
Exactly. So, Bonfire is cool because it lets you customize the website name where people go, so it's a little more readable like that.
That might be different. Maybe I got the thing. I'll see if I can. I'll look into it later. Thanks for that tip. That's a good thing.
Absolutely. Bears supporting bears. That's what we need to do. And that's what I wanted to mention earlier. I was just wanting to touch on this briefly. A little over 4 months ago, I became part of the bear community. Well, getting closer to 5 since I really started hanging around bears, getting into the Unbearables app, on the website there and chatting with folks. And not long after that, I thought, you know what? I really do feel a motivation to start a podcast, start a YouTube show of some kind. And I literally did one video I started doing, taking a walk in the park nearby here. And from then on, I started doing morning live streams pretty much every weekday. I've had some spottiness here or there where I wouldn't do one, but I've tried to get into that habit of every weekday morning. And now I center around about 9 or 9:30, depending on if something else happens. I got to postpone a little bit. But yeah, it's been incredible because everybody's just welcomed me in with open arms. Like I got into the bear thing late, but people took me
Yeah,
right
well,
in.
I took a while to get sociable in the bear thing, even though I'm OG.
Yeah.
So I get it. It takes sometimes it takes a bit for you to kind of to work up the social courage. So I
Sure.
get that. So one thing I'll say about that is just going out in the morning, letting the chickens out, cleaning the hen house tray.
Mm-hmm.
I really love the ability to engage my mind while I'm engaging my body. So like for everyone who's listening and not chatting, from their perspective, thank you a lot for bringing that to the morning, and I hope I can bring that to the evening just a little bit.
Certainly. And I think you do. I enjoy what you bring. And I think that you, Steve Pinder, myself, there's a few others here that I've really seen start to come up and do some neat things. I know
mean, if Eric would just get on a freaking schedule.
Well, he is busy. He's a busy guy. He's got a lot of stuff going on. And he's yeah, he's in the Owen Crowder world, so he's got quite a few hands on his time, so to speak. And I think I can understand that. Like, as I've gotten busier, I have no problem like stepping back from hangouts and chats for a while. Like today, you could go check it out. I really haven't tried to communicate with a whole lot of people today. I actually, for the first time in months, got out in the canoe and I took a little video and uploaded it right before the show. So feel free to check that out. Another Big Drum Bear canoe ride, because I do those from time to time. But just sharing some thoughts, shorter video. I think Kick is, again, that's been another great help.
I haven't seen the video, but it is really excellent view. You called me from the canoe just so you could rub it in. because you're evil like that.
Yes, I'm a horrible evil person. You will only know if you come see my streams just how evil I can be. I'm sorry. That's not true at all. But I do have the potential for evil, as we all do. So that said, back to your question about the why Christianity. I think I want to put more of a finalized point on that. My recognition of my own depravity and no other remedy being communicated to me as sufficient. That's probably the biggest reason. I've entertained the ideas of a variety of other faiths, but the overwhelming evidence for not only the historicity of the scriptures, but the inspired nature of the scriptures, that there is structure even underneath the details of the text in the most microscopic ways, that it's organized in such a complex fashion that draws me in. And that, like music, has been an adventure for me. I think that's something I want to also express here. My faith journey throughout my life has been an adventure, and nothing has given me more thrill than discovering some of the most minute details about the organization of this book we call the Bible. When I get in there and I have a personal walk with the creator of the universe, you might ask, how do you know that that's what you're doing? There are certain details that I'm trying to figure out how to communicate that. There's certain elements of that experience. There's certain elements of what I've learned within the scripture and of my own personal experience. The personal experience stuff, I don't think I could demonstrate empirically. I don't think that's a scientific argument that I could make. But the details of digging into the Bible and seeing how it is structured, there's a probability argument to be made there that I've not seen communicated to me from any other ancient text or any other faith.
That's a really good point.
To me very, very vividly. This is my home. This is where I come from, is this creator.
That's
And
yeah,
my
that's a really good point, and something just a nugget that I noticed there is that you said that no other price would be sufficient, and so you said you'd entertained other texts, other faiths, and so I'm guessing that among them would have been like the Nirvana seeking of Buddhism,
of course.
or the or the way of Taoism,
Yes,
or
I've had instructors when I was in college years ago that
or the works of Judaism, or
yes, yes.
some various Christian heresies.
Well, yes, and I've had plenty of experience with a lot of them. I had Jehovah's Witnesses that used to come to my home in across the river when I lived on the east side of the river with my wife for years. These people would come regularly, and we enjoyed meeting with them. I've known plenty of Jehovah's Witnesses throughout my life, as well as LDS. I have differences of opinion with them on what the scripture actually says, like from an exegetical standpoint, what the text actually says, and then from an expositional standpoint, like what it means, right, in the fullness of it, right? So just it's been very interesting to be around so many different people throughout my life of varying perspectives and opinions on faith matters. And
okay, so like
yeah,
one of the things is it seems to me like you're the point of price and payment is coming up quite a bit. So I think that as a man, you are very morally convicted, and I think that that conviction is the understanding and acceptance of man's fallen nature.
Correct. That's spot on.
Why don't you go ahead and describe what you think that the fallen nature means?
Fallen nature, what does it mean? When God created everything in the beginning, he made it good. The Hebrew word is tov, right? We say good in English. That's usually how it gets translated. But the word is more than just good. The word is complete, functional. It has a purpose, and it is supposed to function in accordance with that purpose.
There's more in the word good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's kind of the point I'm hitting at. So
because
go ahead.
Well, when it said, when I read in English and God said it was good,
yeah,
I don't read and there wasn't any evil or there was nothing bad. I read that it is positive in its state and function.
It's functioning as it was designed to function. It's serving the purposes he built everything to serve. And Ra, the term for evil in Hebrew, is when something is not functioning as it was designed to. It's Ra is when you have, as an example, a vessel of water, a bowl or a glass of water, and you take that and you throw it on the floor and it breaks into 100 pieces. That's Ra. It's no longer, it's destroyed, and it's not capable of fulfilling its purpose. It's not able to do that unless you were able to restore it, to bring it back to wholeness, to completeness, where it could fulfill its purpose again and hold water, right? It's very interesting. Something simple like that. Having water cupped together in one place. Having water cupped together in one place. Sorry, I had to get one more.
So good and evil. So good and evil are relative to the purpose.
Absolutely. That's what I understand as I read there. That's very linked to it. Something's purpose is what it's all about. God created things to serve a purpose and function in a certain way. And when they don't, either by volition or because somebody else acted on them and caused them not to, then it's in a fallen state. It's not just doing what it was designed to do. And that's bad. That's not good. It's not a happy thing. So we're in that position.
Before I forget, hello, Boulder Bear.
Hey, Boulder. I'm glad he's here. Always good to see Boulder.
Yeah.
I want to ask him how many days he's got left. How many days until he's?
Well, I try to avoid the fact that he's in the Hoos Cow on stream because he's really sensitive. He's really sensitive, even though he's queen of the prison kitchen. So.
Well, true, and I wasn't trying to go into detail about it. I just figured we'd know what we were talking about. But I was thinking, how many? I hope it's soon. I hope he's almost done.
And hello, McNicktown.
Normal time. Yeah, hello to Mr. Nicktown.
Okay, so
anyway, back to
I'm going to try and get this I think I've got it. So good and evil are relative to the purpose, and God has a purpose for all of creation, and man's propensity to go actively against that purpose is what his fallen nature is.
Well, and I would redirect you back to Romans. I'm going to think now. I want to say 8:28. Romans 8:28. For all things work together for good to those who love God and are the called according to his purpose. Right. So what Paul is telling us there, reminding us of, is that all things work together for that completeness, for that function. In essence, one unified purpose. Right. So it's not that everything bad and good are relative to purpose in a sense. It's that there is an ultimate objective purpose. Right. And we're fallen from that. We're not doing that, whether by someone else's misstep that affected us negatively or by our own volition. We're not functioning in the way we were built to. So that fallen state that we have a part to play in, right? We need restoration in order to be able to be in wholeness again, right? God's not going to have himself in the presence of things that aren't functioning, because when something's corrupted, when it's broken down, then it has the capability to corrupt everything else that it's in contact with. So to prevent corruption from spreading all throughout,
God didn't want to.
Does that make sense? That's
I think that God didn't want to spend eternity with dogs.
Say that again.
God didn't want to spend eternity with dogs. He
No.
created a creature that could actively choose him.
Exactly, right?
And that's the purpose. And so the fact I'm sorry. I was
saying, because we have that ability, we often don't. I didn't mean to speak over you. I was
That's actually what I was going to say.
Yeah. Yeah, so, we're in agreement on that point.
Yeah, the choice is the purpose. Looks like Gab is having some trouble. But anyway,
I'm fallen. I need him. I don't do what I know I ought to do. I need him because of that. And I spend every day trying to focus on that.
Okay.
If that better answers the question.
Actually, it's more of a succinct reiteration, but it does bring something up in my mind, is this question of original sin and children.
Yeah.
And so there's a fierce debate with a lot of people. I've got my own view on it. I think that your view would be interesting. Is some people say that children are without sin.
Yeah, I would disagree.
And some people say that children are I guess evil. Is what is
I think
that's actually the straw man. Is children are capable of sinning? Is what I would say is the other position.
What's to understand sin then? I think that's that's the issue that stands out at me, is because I've had this idea in my mind for the most of my time, is just seeing it's like good or bad, evil and not evil, whatever the case may be, however you want to dichotomize that. But I think that this concept of functional completeness in the word tov, right? We get that concept of tov being you're tov if you're doing what you were designed to do, and you're ra if you're not, right? You're not doing what you're designed to do. So if you're corrupted in some way and broken from doing what you're supposed to. So are children ever able to do that which they weren't intended to do? Yeah. Do they have some degree of volition? Some. It's like, are children just following instinct and that's all they do? No, they have ever increasing complexity in their volition. As they grow, their ability of volition grows.
Okay, well, let's give the straw man. Let's bring up the straw man just a little.
Okay,
bit.
Go ahead, straw man. Yeah.
Does that mean that children are damned?
Children are banned?
No, damned.
Oh, damned. No,
no,
not at all.
I'm using the word properly. It doesn't count as a cuss.
No, not. I don't take it as one, man.
Okay, YouTube.
Yeah,
I'm not swearing. This is still family friendly.
No. David had a child that King David, he had a child that passed away. And it was a result of sin that he'd entered into, I think with Bathsheba, and his first child died. But he was given assurance that he would see his child again in heaven, right? He would be reunited with his child. So that what I understand from that story, maybe I'm reading it entirely wrong. That's possible. But from what I understand from that story, he would see that infant again, right? So that infant would be, there would be salvation there in some way, shape, or form. So I would say that this idea of the age of accountability concept, I don't believe that there's a hard and fast age. I think that's, relative to each individual's person's
actually, here's
capacity for understanding.
That brings up something really interesting. My view on it is in the garden, Adam and Eve were made, and they were made as adults. But they spent an indeterminate amount of time just in the garden. It's like the fall didn't happen the day after creation. We just don't know how long they were in the garden, because we do know that it was for some time, because they had become accustomed to walking with God in the evening, because it says, as was their custom. I think that's in the NASV translation, but I this is off the top of my head here, so give me a break. Before this fall, they weren't really accountable, even though they were adults. It wasn't until they disobeyed God and ate of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil that they became accountable, and it was because they knew what they were doing. After that, because they knew the difference between good and evil.
I've heard that position. I think I've had that position for most of my life. I would say over the last maybe between 7 to 10 years, that position sort of changed for me. And I think it comes from my understanding of what the enemy was capable of in the garden, what actually transpired there. To my best understanding, the more I read the book, when God created everything, he created it good, complete, perfect, right? But the enemy came in amongst the garden and had the ability to corrupt that which God had made to make it not function according to its purpose. So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil being poison, bringing the result of death as what happens when you eat of it, wasn't, I believe, the originally intended purpose of that tree. And I think it was made to be that way by the enemy. So when they ate off of it, then the effect of them having the knowledge of good and evil, it's not quite as simple as we would understand it, right? Like they were told, the tree of life, that's a good thing to eat of. This other tree, now it's poison. Something's happened to it. The day you eat of it, you will die, right? That's now going to be the result. So the image in my mind, as I understand that, again, this is my understanding. It could very well be wrong. I'm just trying to give that to you as clearly as I can. To me, it'd be like if God put it there and it originally designed that as you eat this and then you're going to have the result being your ultimate death. For God to do that would be the equivalent in my mind of a parent putting a plate before their child and having pudding in the midst of that plate and saying, don't eat that pudding. There's poison in it. Like, why would you put that in front of them in the first place?
Well, no. I think it's more like the marshmallow test.
I don't want to talk over you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I think it's more like the marshmallow test. I think it's more like God put a big marshmallow on the plate and said, here, there's a marshmallow there. Right. Don't eat that marshmallow. And if you don't, you'll get 2 marshmallows in 2 minutes.
That's a possibility. Right. It's like, okay, so I get that perspective. And that is certainly a possibility. That could be the way he's setting that up. That perspective has seemed less and less. It seemed less and less likely to me. Like I've had less and less of a connection with that and thinking that that's likely to be the case. My view at this point is God didn't design the tree to be that way. He designed it to work perfectly. And I believe Adam and Eve had volition. They had an understanding of.
Well, if the purpose of creation is for God to have children who are capable of choosing him, that means that according to his purpose, then he had to provide the wrong choice.
And I understand that as well, and I've considered that. Like, I'm not saying that that's not the case. I'm just saying I don't know if it's quite that simple, or I don't even know if that's simple.
I don't think that I don't think that's a simple understanding at all.
No, right. I wonder about that. Like, could that be the case? Could he have put the choice in front of them? Sure, but I don't necessarily always approach things like that with my kids. I think like my understanding of God, and I think this is definitely a biblical idea here. My understanding of God is informed largely now by my relationship with my own children and how I relate with my kids. So I get a sense of how God is toward me and how I am toward him in the way that I am toward my kids and my kids are toward me. Right. And so I still have a very difficult time with this idea that I've got to give you the choice to love me or not. And I have to give you opportunities to not love me in order for that relationship to be full. It's like, no, I need to teach them by word. And if they have the opportunity to never break that, that's better than them doing it and having to suffer consequences. Like, I don't want my kids in a situation to suffer bad consequences, if at all. I'd much rather they get the message of what they need to know to live by my word, and that they trust me. That's far better than them having the option to, for example, I'll take this to an extreme, run in the street or don't. Like, I want to cut that before it even gets there. I don't want them to have to do the hard thing to learn the lesson. If I'm God, I'm capable of teaching them that without having to give them the hard choice. I'm capable of giving them volition and them choosing to love me without them having to choose a hard choice. I'm bigger than that. That's how I understand my view of God is like, he's bigger than having to give them a choice between those things. And so what seems to be the pattern throughout scripture over and over again, and this view that I have now seems to fit that pattern, is that the enemy comes in and messes up what God set up and corrupts it. And he's in the business of restoring that over and over and over again. We get in trouble when we agree with what he's corrupted. We step into the corruption ourselves. We willingly make that choice. And so the choice is there just by the fact that Satan was already in there and had the ability to mess things up in the first place. So the volition.
Well, that makes sense, except for God allows Satan to exist.
Exactly. That's what I'm in full agreement with you on that. He does allow Satan to exist.
I mean, to my mind, the entire point is God wants intelligent and willful creatures to spend eternity with.
Correct.
And
Satan
and so he made angels.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why, but he must have decided that they weren't quite what he was looking for. And so then he made us.
Well, I think that
there's a whole different purpose for angels.
Exactly.
But I don't know what it is.
Nor do I. I think what I can definitely get from what I read from the scriptures is that they are the attendants to the throne of God. They are the attendants and the
well, we know what they do.
Right.
Or a portion of what they do, but that's not quite the same thing as knowing the why.
Exactly. No, you're right. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Is like, we see examples of them acting, so we see them serving certain purposes, but no, we don't have the full picture. And that's fine, because we're not them, right? We have our stuff to deal with. They have theirs to deal with. And it says that they marvel at us. They sit back and they learn from watching us. So he has a great grandiose plan. We don't get to know all of it, but what we do see, I tend to see this thing where he set something up and he gave not only us, but he gave angels volition, including Lucifer. Lucifer said, hey, I'm going to do this, and corrupt stuff and break it up from what God originally designed. So it's not function the way it was designed to. Now that's infected the whole creation. And now we're in the process of being restored back to the way he started in the beginning, because he promised he'd do that. Yeah, with that beep, that's actually making me think. It's about 9:30 here. And I do have to. I do have some
alarms.
We got to pump some brakes.
It's actually a really good discussion. I gotta have you on again, but I know just to talk more about this. But since this was like the introductory for you,
Yeah.
just just one more thing I want to really just if we can sink in with just the one question is what is it like to be in this kind of musical comedy internet podcasting world and a dad?
Huh. Yes. That's a good question. And I think I can
I'm a bachelor with no chillins, a celibate bachelor, so come on, give me that good dad knowledge.
Well, you kind of get a perspective of that from Owen because, he's a pop, but his kids are much younger, right?
Yeah, but he's an insane person.
That's also true. He is a bit insane. I'm not saying that I'm much better. I have 4 and my youngest is almost 8, so I've been doing this dad thing for a while and in different capacities. I've been in the regular married relationship. I've been through divorce. I'm remarried. And so I've experienced it from a lot of different vantage points.
Remind me to ask you about picking a marriage on our next show.
Do that sometime. Wait, why don't we talk about that another time? Because that would be a great discussion. I'd love to do that. To answer this question in finality here, I try to conduct myself respectably when I do my streams. I've thought more and more about that because I know that they can watch the show. They've told me they do at times, which is great. And I want to be talking about things that not only encourage bears, but encourage them. I want to be talking about things. I want to be behaving in ways that I can respect years down the road. And I also am very careful to make sure that my kids don't end up in my streams. I just don't want to create any potential disagreements, between me and their mom on stuff like that. Cause that's no fun. And, I want to encourage them in it because I show them the streams at times. I show them bits and things like that, but I want to encourage them that they could use, YouTube and other video platforms like Vimeo and other things like that to communicate their ideas with a group of people. They can get out there and have a larger community to share their interests with. And it could be a platform that they can grow and perhaps work into something that draws in some income for them so that they can maybe focus more of their time in doing that type of thing that they're really passionate about. But I want to conduct myself in such a way that not only can I be, can I feel satisfied by what I do, but that my kids can feel proud of it. Like that they can say, that's something honorable that dad's doing there. And I think about that. I think about that from my wife's perspective too. It's like, is she going to be pleased, in what I'm trying to pursue with this and how I'm going about it? And I'm reevaluating that all the time. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah, that does. And again, gotta have you on again. And any final thoughts? Everyone, go subscribe to Big Drum Bear if you haven't already.
Thanks, guys.
If you haven't, then you're probably a commie, so you need to go over there even more to get that cured.
Don't love Chunk.
Yeah. And you need to love Chunk.
That's required.
You need to love Chunk.
Yeah.
I just showed the shirt again. So
very nice. Thank you. Yeah, I can't see you, but you can see me.
Yeah, I know it's OBS and my cameras, they don't like it.
That's right.
Yeah, last thoughts. Go on.
Yeah. I love bears. I love hanging out with bears. I love encouraging folks, and I'm really grateful to get to do what I do. I'm looking forward to new challenges that come up. I want to do what I do better. Try to strive for doing better in life. Try to strive to know better what you know. Try to strive to do what you do better, and dream. Think of how you could be in a position to better serve those around you. Look at the situation you've got in front of you. See how you can just start there and do that better. Because I know I'm messing a whole bunch of stuff up every single day. I'll be the first one to admit it. Well, maybe I won't be the first all the time.
So in other words, strive every day to engage your body, engage your mind, and to serve the ultimate purpose.
You gotta keep in with that guy. Whether you're down with that or not, investigate it. And if you are down with that, if you have that relationship, engage in it every day, because if you're not engaged in that relationship, you're not going to be engaged right in the others. I constantly have to check that every day, because I drop the ball constantly, and I'm constantly learning how can I better serve those, because that's what I'm here to do. That's my function. It's my purpose.
Yeah. Once again, thank you so much for coming on and putting up with me grilling you for your life story and your theological justification and your parenting style and your social life. Oh boy, we got to a lot.
We did, man.
So once again, thank you. You're definitely going to end up on the stream again at some point, another Saturday, and looking forward to that. And Big Riggin, if you're still here, please, I gotta get a hold of you, so jump on one of the hangouts, please. We'll text or video call. So thank you again, and have a great night. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm skipping Florida Man. So yeah. Thanks again, and have a good night.
Pieces.
All right, so everyone, I'm gonna wrap it up here. We've gone over by quite a bit. I've got a chicken coop to go close up, and oh goodness gracious, I'll be on the hangout for you, Big Riggin, if you're still there. Once again, the link to the shirt is in the description, as well as the link to this incredibly handsome mug, which will improve your life by several fold for certain. And if you enjoyed the stream, please go ahead and hit the like button. And if you would like to see more, please subscribe and hit the bell if you would like that subscription to mean anything. If you would like to support Field Talk, then you can go to paypal.me/fieldtalk in order to sow the field. Or, once again, you can follow the link in the description labeled mug, get one of these, or, as I've mentioned, several other wonderful products. And once again, follow the link in the description to Big Drum Bear's channel. Subscribe there for really good morning streams. And as always, never forget that socialism always ends in starvation and genocide. Have a great night, guys.